Welcome back, everyone. It's great to have you with us again as we continue our deep dive into the world of Iranian philosophy.
Yes, welcome back.
We're on episode 22, still making our way through those 40 fascinating conversations between Dr. Dinani and Dr. Loriani.
That's right, 22 out of 40.
And just a quick reminder before we jump in, we're dealing with translated conversations here, so things can get a little tricky.
Yeah, translation's always a bit of a tightrope walk.
But that challenge of translation, well, it kind of leads us perfectly into today's topic. We're going to be looking at how Rumi himself, this incredible poet, how he really wrestled with the limitations of language when it came to describing those mystical experiences.
It is pretty amazing to see, a master of language like Rumi grappling with the fact that sometimes words just aren't enough.
Exactly. And it's not just about, the poetry itself, even his pen name, right? Rumi.
Rumi, yeah.
Meaning silence.
Meaning silence. Now, that's a pretty interesting choice for a poet, don't you think?
It is. It's like you're a poet, but you're calling yourself silence. There's definitely something deeper going on there. What do the experts say about that?
Well, Dr. Loriani, he had a really interesting take on it. He has suggested that this whole idea of silence, it reflects a state of knowing so much that words just can't keep up. It's kind of like, and this was his analogy, trying to explain the taste of chocolate to someone who's never tasted it before.
I get it, yeah. You can describe it, use all the fancy words, but they won't truly get it until they actually experience it for themselves.
Right, exactly.
So it's not just about, choosing to be silent. Yeah. It's about reaching a point where words just, I don't know, they lose their power to capture the depth of the experience.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so if Rumi, this master poet, if even he struggled to express these really deep mystical truths, I mean, how can we as readers even begin to grasp them?
That's a great question. And it can feel a little intimidating, right? Like, are we even equipped to, really get Rumi?
Yeah, a little bit. It feels like, oh, this is way over my head.
Yeah, but don't worry. Dr. Dinani, he offers a different perspective here. He says we need to go beyond just the intellect, engage our intuition. Our empathy.
Intuition.
Yeah, feel Rumi's words, not just understand them.
So we need to kind of, tune into a different frequency.
Exactly, and that's where this idea of divine madness comes in.
Divine madness. Okay, this is getting interesting.
It's about embracing the mystery, the wonder, stepping outside of our usual ways of thinking.
So are we talking about, throwing logic out the window completely?
Not exactly. It's more like, imagine loosening your grip on certainty. Being open to new ways of experiencing the world.
Okay, so expanding our understanding, not abandoning it.
Exactly. And you know what? This actually leads us perfectly to one of Rumi's most famous metaphors, the reed flute.
Oh yes, the reed flute. I always found that such a beautiful, powerful image.
It is. It's a symbol of the soul yearning for that unity with the divine. The reed flute separated from its source, longing to return, just like we yearn for that connection, that wholeness.
So we're all kind of like little flutes, trying to play our soul's music.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get lost, we forget the tune, maybe we're playing a little out of key.
That's a great way to put it. And the journey Rumi talks about, it's about rediscovering that harmony, reconnecting with that source.
But how do we do that? How do we find our way back?
Well, this is where the conversation takes a really interesting turn. Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani, they start talking about this human tendency, right, to focus on similarities, but kind of miss those crucial differences.
Oh, I see where this is going.
And they actually use this funny story about a parrot. This parrot, he gets punished, for spilling some oil.
Oh no, poor parrot.
Right, and then he sees someone with a bald head, and he's like, oh, you must have spilled some oil too.
That's a funny image. But I get the point. We often jump to conclusions based on just, surface level stuff.
Exactly. And this tendency, they call it, it roughly translates to, a common analogy.
Common analogy, okay.
And they're saying it can really lead us astray, especially when we're trying to understand those deeper spiritual things.
So are all analogies bad? Or is there a difference between this common analogy and the kind of reasoning that, philosophers use?
That's a really good question. And that's exactly the point they're making. This common analogy, it's based on feelings, assumptions, not that strict, rigorous logic. And they share another story to illustrate this, about a deaf man visiting a sick friend. The friend's voice is weak, he's making gestures.
Oh, I see.
But the deaf man, he misinterprets it all because he's projecting his own assumptions onto the situation.
So the takeaway is we need to be really aware of our own biases.
Yes.
and not assume that everyone thinks or feels the same way we do, especially when it comes to, like, spiritual matters.
Absolutely, because those inner experiences, they can be so diverse even when we look similar on the outside.
That's such an important reminder. It makes me think about all those times I've probably misjudged someone just based on how they look.
It happens to all of us. And this understanding of Cha, this idea that we have to recognize those individual differences, it's really crucial to understanding Rumi's work.
This has given me a lot to think about.
And we're just getting started. There's so much more to unpack here. Rumi's exploration of language and silence, the limits of human understanding, it's a really rich and fascinating topic.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I'm definitely hooked. Can't wait to dive even deeper.
So really getting this idea, about moving past those surface comparisons, understanding how Anyo can trip us up, that's really key to unlocking those deeper layers of Rumi's work.
So it's not just like reading pretty poetry and thinking, oh, that's nice. It's about taking those insights and actually applying them to our lives.
Exactly. Rumi's not just giving us nice words, he's laying out a path.
Yeah.
A path to transformation, a way to cultivate a more compassionate, connected way of being.
I like that. A roadmap for transformation. But sometimes these concepts, they can feel kind of abstract, right? Like, how do I actually,
That's where Rumi's genius comes in. He uses those metaphors, those stories. He gets that these profound truths, they often hit us harder through the heart, through the imagination.
Makes me think about how he often uses the Prophet Muhammad as an example of, like, love and surrender.
Right.
Dr. Dhanani even mentioned that powerful line from the Quran, if not for you, I would not have created the heavens.
Perfect example. Rumi, he saw the Prophet Muhammad as the embodiment of pure love, selfless, totally surrendered to the divine.
So it's not just about admiring Muhammad, it's about striving to embody those qualities ourselves. Love, surrender.
Exactly. Recognizing that spark of the divine within each of us, the potential for that kind of boundless love.
Sounds beautiful, but how do we actually, like, cultivate that kind of love in our messy everyday lives?
Well, Dr. Dhanani uses this beautiful metaphor here, polishing the mirror of the heart.
I love that. It's so vivid. What does it mean practically, though?
It's about purifying our intentions, letting go of the negative stuff, creating space for compassion, kindness, generosity.
It's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, it's a constant process of inner work. Could be as simple as just being mindful of our thoughts, choosing to focus on the positive, practicing gratitude.
So not necessarily grand gestures.
Right. It's those small, consistent actions that nurture love and compassion.
Each act of kindness, each genuine connection, it's like polishing that mirror, letting that divine light shine through.
Beautifully said.
Makes me think about my own heart, my own mirror. What needs polishing? Maybe it's that tendency to judge, holding on to grudges, or maybe just not being present in my relationships,
It's a journey of self-discovery. And Rumi's work, it's like a guide for that journey. He shows us that true love, it's not about perfection. It's about embracing ourselves fully, warts and all.
Sometimes all this talk about love and surrender, it can feel a little overwhelming. Like, how do we balance that with setting boundaries, protecting ourselves? We don't want to get hurt, right?
That's such an important point. And both Dr. Dhanani and Dr. Lirzoni, they talk about this. They emphasize that true love doesn't mean being a doormat. It's about recognizing your own worth, setting boundaries that honor that.
So surrendering to love without losing ourselves in the process.
Finding that sweet spot, openness and self-respect.
I see that. It's like Rumi's calling us to embrace a more expansive way of being, more inclusive.
Yeah.
One that acknowledges both our individuality and our interconnectedness with, with everyone, with everything.
You put that beautifully. And that's the core of Rumi's message, isn't it? A message that's just as powerful now as it was centuries ago.
I'm feeling so inspired, but also a little overwhelmed,
Yeah.
by the sheer depth of Rumi's wisdom.
I hear you. It's a lot to take in. Even after years of studying his work, I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface. Maybe this is a good moment to just pause, reflect a little. What's resonating with you right now? Any questions popping up?
Yeah, let's take a moment. I encourage you, listener, to do the same. What stands out to you? What are you curious about?
And maybe most importantly, what's one small step you can take today to bring a little bit of Rumi's radical love into your own life?
Taking a step back and looking at everything we've talked about today, it's amazing how Rumi's work, it's so old, but it feels so relevant to, to the world we live in.
It really does. It's like his words, they cut through time. They speak to something so fundamental about being human.
What really sticks with me is this idea of love as this transformative force, And I don't mean like romantic love, but something much deeper.
Right. It's that fiery aspect of love we were talking about, right? The way it burns away all those illusions and attachments, all the things that keep us separate.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like Rumi's challenging us to rethink what love really is, what it can be.
It's not about cleaning, possessing, controlling.
It's about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves, something that connects us all.
Recognizing that interconnectedness, that we all come from the same source.
And that can be so liberating, can it?
Absolutely.
It makes me think of that concept, there's nothing but God, that idea of ultimate unity.
Powerful concept.
It really is. It just shatters that illusion of separation,
Yeah.
that we're all just isolated individuals struggling on our own.
When really we're all part of this vast web of existence.
Yeah.
It's humbling.
It is, and inspiring.
Yeah.
And when you start to live with that understanding, that interconnectedness, it changes everything. How you see the world, how you relate to other people.
It makes me think about how Rumi talks about compassion
Oh, yeah.
as a key part of love. Not just pity, but real understanding. Being able to see the world through someone else's eyes.
Yes, exactly. Compassion becomes the bridge. It connects us, allows us to move beyond judgment, beyond separation, and experience that unity that Rumi talks about so beautifully.
So after spending all this time with Rumi, what's resonating most deeply with you?
For me, it's the reminder that, the spiritual journey isn't about escaping the world. It's not about denying our human experience.
Yeah.
It's about embracing it all, the joy and the sorrow, the light and the dark, and finding that love that runs through it all.
Seeing that divine spark in ourselves and
Yeah.
in everyone we meet.
Exactly. It's about cultivating those extra senses, as Dr. Dinani put it.
Intuition, empathy, wonder.
Yeah, those things that allow us to see the world more clearly, more deeply, with more compassion. It's about polishing that mirror of the heart.
So that we can reflect that divine light more fully.
Yes.
Well, this has been an incredible journey. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on Rumi's work.
Me too. And I hope you, the listener, feel the same way. We'll leave you with this question. What would it mean to bring even a little bit of Rumi's radical love into your own life? What's one small step you can take today to move closer to that boundless ocean of love that he describes so beautifully? Until next time, keep your hearts open, your minds curious. And thank you for joining us on Wisdom Unveiled.